this is not only a story of those 88 people, but this is a story of so many of us. My name is Anastasia Gajkowska, and when I left my abusive relationship, I wanted to create a movie, a film, a documentary where I interview not only survivors, but thrivers. I mean, people who left abusive relationships and they're really thriving now. I flew to Hollywood to learn the art of making films. I asked 8 questions. This documentary is a sample of combined stories. I use my laptop camera, my phone camera. Many recordings you will see in this documentary were filmed by survivors in their own home. All our participants decided to share their story voluntarily. 88 stories, one soul, one voice, one calling for the whole humanity. Welcome back. In this episode, you are going to learn about all the reasons why people stay in unhealthy relationships. You are going to hear from thrivers themselves and from Exposé experts. Enjoy.
No matter how much you understand in your cognitive conscious brain that he's not treating me right, or this isn't healthy, you still have that feeling inside that it's like this longing desire for this person, and it really feels like love. It's just a program that was set into your body, is based on the way that our caretakers emotionally attuned with us before the age of 3. And what emotional attunement means is they would get down on your level and look you in the eye and let you know that they were with you in whatever emotion that you were expressing. They allowed you to be upset. They allowed you to be happy and ecstatic, and they didn't shut you down when you got excited. And when that happened, you would have a secure attachment style, which in adulthood translates into, I'm comfortable with my emotions. I know that people will be there for me. I know that I can set boundaries. They know inherently and understand that conflict in a relationship is an opportunity for resolution. As that young child, whenever your parent leaves, it's like a tear and a fear of abandonment. First of all, you develop this desperation around your parent leaving at any moment, and you start watching their eyes move this way and that way, and they're getting ready to get up, and you're like, where are you going? Where are you going? Like, what's happening? As an adult, you associate love with abandonment. Love and abandonment become one thing, right? They don't understand relationship without that inconsistency.
The personality of that person changed from the person that I fell in love with to the person that he was becoming.
Accepted the apology and things were great. There's even flowers as an apology. There is a date night. There is a sliver of the person that you knew before the abuse started that you're like, oh gosh, he's coming back. Like, this is the person I fell in love with. And then the tension starts building and you start walking on the eggshells, and it's like, oh God, here we go again.
The avoidant attachment style is developed when the parents were mostly neglectful of the emotional needs of the child. And as adults, these are your people that are like playboy type of person. We're in a relationship for 2 to 3 months. As soon as things get very serious, they're out, they find a anxious person, right? And this anxious person is all, very open, emotion on their sleeve, happy to engage and get close. So the avoidant person sees the anxious person and likes that. But the avoidant person, their nervous system can't handle too much of that. They pull away. And when they pull away, that triggers the anxious attachment style to say, oh, there's that inconsistency, must be love.
Of the reason why we end up in abusive relationships is because we're exposed to it in the past. So if you grew up in a household where you saw love was expressed in such a way, even if it could be considered the lack of love, but if you saw your parents relate to each other in a toxic nature, whatever you saw your parents model for you is what you believe is normal, and what becomes your baseline of your expectations for your own future. And this is all done very subconsciously. So we end up having a type of a person that we're interested in and get the butterflies, and we're attracted to whomever that reminds us of that past subconsciously. And so we're drawn to what we know. And that's because the brain is actually designed to go towards what feels familiar. That makes us feel safe, secure. We know how to deal with it. We know how to live in that universe because we've been exposed to it for many years, and it just feels good. And so we end up in a situation that reminds us of that past. And even if it doesn't feel good, and it's not a healthy situation, we still know how to cope with it, and it feels very familiar. And so we think that's our type. And that's why we end up picking these partners over and over again.
We're trying to control the outcome and control a different ending. That's another reason why we return to these patterns.
If what you have grown up with is abuse, we tend to go back to that in the unconscious hope that there will be some resolution.
Be the rescuer, and maybe this time it will be different.
And oftentimes, even when people get out of a situation, the codependency that's created by those situations and the sense of dependency on someone leaves a void in their life where they end up going right back into another situation, and they end up in these situations over and over again. I especially see that with women. It happens with men too, but I would say that women, there's more, that's more stigmatized.
People who have anxious attachment as a starting point tend to not be good at listening to their own needs and their own perception, because they are hyper-focused externally on the outside world. They learn to read other people's needs so they could accommodate everybody else. And therefore, they haven't learned to attune very well to their own needs and own boundaries. And therefore, they don't trust their own emotions and sensations. They're not in touch with it. And that makes us, again, very vulnerable. Trauma bond is a chemical addiction. So this is how it's created. And it's actually the strongest bond that we know in psychology, which is very, very difficult to break. It's this initial infatuation from these chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, and then mixed with anxiety and fear. Love bombing, which is a state of idolization where they idolize you, tell you they're so curious about you, everything about you is amazing. What that does is it triggers your reward hormone in your brain called dopamine, which makes you feel fantastic about yourself. They often go quick to physicality, physical intimacy, which triggers something called oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone that also makes you trust. So it makes you trust them when you shouldn't actually trust this person yet because you don't know them, which is why we become blind when we engage very quickly in these dynamics and also become sexual very quickly. We go into a temporary state of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is basically also elevated levels of dopamine. We no longer see the person for who they are. We also start idolizing, and then we make very poor judgment and choices.
If you have a relationship in which there is the highest of highs, with the most extraordinary highs, and then the most devastating lows, you are in a trauma-bonded relationship. If you have never experienced, if this person is your soulmate, and yet at the same time he crushes your soul, that is a trauma bond. Our brains are addicted to, because when we get that rush, we get a rush of dopamine, which is a brain chemical that surrounds it's the reward center of the brain. We're good, we did good, and we get rewarded. with whether it's a Cartier bracelet or it's flowers, intensity of the makeup sex and the like, oh my God, the bond, like the bond that we have. Right. Your brain gets addicted to returning to that place and is constantly seeking it.
Another thing is that when our intuition kicks in, it's not hugely consumer friendly, in as much as it is non-verbal. You get this message from your intuition which says, don't go there if you're lucky, 3 words, or no. And so we've been taught to believe the word first and foremost, rather than the non-verbal signals that we get. So the intuition goes, and your head goes, but what's going on here? This person seems perfectly nice, they're polite, they're this, they're that, it's only fair to give them a chance. And so that really gets in the way too. And the third thing is that society has taught us all sorts of rubbish that gets in the way. Most of what we read about love and romance, most of what we watch on films is very disquieting. You know, boys are only horrible to you because they like you. No, boys are horrible to you because they're being horrible to you. And there's something horrible in the way they relate to you. They always give us the message, nobody else can give you what I give you. And the fact is that nobody else, quite possibly, had given you as much as they gave you at the beginning. And even though it's all fake, because we haven't been brought up with the real stuff, we don't know that. So we become hooked in, and the kind of almost the excessiveness of it is like the buzz of junk food. It's so typical that you leave a narcissist and people say to you, but you were so happy together. And you haven't actually been happy together for God knows how long. But in public, you will always have this sort of rictus. Everything's perfect, and people just fell for it. So there's very much that to consider as well. And then there's the other piece that you stay also because the abuser has done a very good job over a long time of telling you that you're so incredibly lucky to have them and nobody else will want you. And they've made you feel so unlovable and worthless that you believe it. That you believe that whatever faults that they've picked on would make you totally revolting to another person. And this is all just lies. So we stay because of a lot of misinformation, because we're heavily invested, because we are so tired and so out of hope from being in that situation. We give more chances than we should because we've really lost contact with who we are.
I have a caretaking survival instinct. I will take care of you so you don't hurt me anymore. If I can't take care of you, what am I worth?
Really feeling like, wow, I just wanted to help this person.
I felt like I could heal him and I could fix him somehow.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like he's going to come and save you and like help you open up your heart to love.
Maybe he's not perfect, but I'm also not perfect. And because I also was a single mom already, I had a 3-year-old kid. And I thought like, I don't have any right to have something better than this. So I just try to fix it and try to just focus on the love that I felt and focus on seeing the good things and just kind of ignore the bad things that happened.
You feel so broken by what they do to you and what they say to you. I mean, he just made me feel old, ugly, worthless, that no one would want me, that he was the best I was ever going to get, that I could never do anything better than him. And, you know, over time, you believe it. You know, they just, with the constant voice and, you know, everything that they're saying, you just like, oh, it must be true. I didn't have any of that. He'd actually cheated on me. So I was very much hurt by that. So to have I was like, wow, this is amazing. Till it wasn't.
What happens is when you have high level of cortisol through long times of stress, which is what you have with an abuser, your memory function actually shuts down and you can't store the memory properly anymore. Something called the hippocampus, which is part of storing memory, doesn't function anymore. And your perception of time starts shutting down, which is why you become in a traumatized loop you can't get out of.
He was influential. He like the connections in the city. Wow, he had money. He could get me whatever I wanted, and he treated me like a queen. At that time, for me, my experience was like a golden cage.
You know, maybe it was just a one-time thing, though.
When he was having a rage, I would always say to him, I see your heart. I see you. And I was thinking I was seeing you as that person that I met, but actually the person that he was showing me was him. But I'd switched the characters around to give, say, Jekyll and Hyde. I was kind of giving Hyde excuses, and Jekyll, you know, was the person he was. But, you know, ultimately, it's probably the other way around. But it's interesting how we do, our mind just wants to give us what we want to see.
I just turned the blind eye because it was too, I would have to take action. And I knew that at that time, I just wasn't at that place. The cognitive dissonance, when I also got to understanding that, it just blew me away.
This is happening. I see it. I hear it. But I love him so much, he couldn't possibly do that. So it was just a constant tug of war back and forth with myself. And again, from patterns from my childhood, not being able to verbalize and stand up for myself and say, hey, when you do this, it upsets me and this is how it makes me feel. I was scared to do that. I started to bring certain things to his attention, and I always gave him the benefit of the doubt.
I didn't see those things, and now in hindsight, because of those different relationships within my childhood and then going into adulthood, also crossing into domestic violence relationships myself, I think now going back into that interpersonal relationship itself with this person, again, I didn't understand that they were breaking boundaries, or I was just appeasing certain situations and I wasn't seeing things as red flags and recognizing them. And unfortunately, that person took full advantage of my inability to see this or my ability to appease it.
That's not him. That's not who he is. It's the alcohol. Like, he got caught prostituting and tried to lie to me about it. And his response was, well, I got caught and nothing happened.
He would hide behind having ADHD as a way to forget, but then the stories were constantly changing.
He also had a brain injury when he was 16. He would use his brain injury as a scapegoat. He could be yelling at me, calling me names, and he could get on the phone with someone and be totally calm.
Why are you worrying about this? And don't worry, like, I promise this isn't going to happen again.
Please don't leave me, I'll change.
I actually broke up with him 9 times.
I tried to leave him, which was over 100 times.
Maybe even 15 times. I always went back.
I had never left.
I understand why people stay.
I made excuses. I thought it was because with those cultural differences, I thought it was because he'd left his home and moved to my home, which was a different country. I thought it was because he was stressed from work. He then said that he was depressed, so went and got tablets, which he never actually took.
So when you're in love, it's different. You think it's okay. You have that hope. You have that, like fairy tale. You have that. He might change. He might actually, maybe if I do this, he will change. Maybe if I say yes to this, I will change. But no, in reality, once it is you're in an abusive relationship, it's a cycle. He'll say sorry, he'll do that, and then you get him back again, and it goes back again. So it's a cycle, and then you would not know until you have kids, and the kids gets affected, and the kids sees this, and your kids are crying. These are young kids. We're not talking about 7, we're talking about 2-3-year-old kids who seeing parents who are fighting and all that. So that was really hard, and I was like, no, I feel like I'm repeating the cycle when in my environment when I was growing up in Philippines.
First, you've got all those endorphins and oxytocin and everything because you're in love and it's fun and it's new. And, we did a lot. We went to a lot of concerts. We traveled. It was like being a kid in love again. Like I thought I met my soulmate, but the person that I fell in love with doesn't even exist.
And so it's a repeated cycle of this behavior until you're so deep in that you're like, oh my God, this is what it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to accept this. This is what my mother went through. But even though she went through it, I still at that point was not classifying myself as a victim. Okay. I thought I still had a handle on things. I thought, at least he really goes to great lengths to apologize to me. At least he's not beating me in front of our house in the public, right? It's behind closed doors. It's not for everybody to see like what happened between my father and her. Like I kept like disassociating myself with, it's not that bad, right? I kept putting myself in that corner when it really was that bad. And even if there was no physical abuse, the amount of verbal put downs and emotional drama that I went through mentally, that in itself was just as bad as if I, never had gotten physically hit, which I did.
I felt shame. So that's why I was like trying to hide it.
Yeah.
Because I always had thought to myself, oh, I would never end up in a situation like that. Not me.
Yeah.
But there I was. So I was embarrassed to admit it to some people. But then slowly to come out of the closet and tell everybody about it. And then people's reactions were like, well, I kind of thought there was something going on.
So that feeling lonely could be the reason why we, get into a relationship with someone who actually doesn't really deserve us. But it also could be the reason why we stay with them, because we're afraid that they'll be all we can find and we don't want to be on our own in the future. So often the reasons that make us vulnerable for being targeted and manipulated by a narcissist or an abusive person is often the reasons why we stay. So if if you have low self-esteem, if you have low self-worth, it can be, and they come along and they make you feel that you're the most beautiful person or the most amazing person they've ever met. It can fill that gap that you have to start with, but because you have low self-esteem, they will also break you down further, which that lack of confidence and low self-esteem is also could be one of the reasons why you stay, because you have no self-worth and you think you don't deserve anything better, you know. So really what a narcissist will do is they will look at you when they're, you know, when we first meet them, and they will ask you questions. They will appear really attentive, and you will think that you've met your perfect person, and you will tell them the deepest, innermost wounds that you have, your hurts, the things that you're afraid of, the things that you feel guilty about, the things that you're ashamed of. We all have them. But what happens is, in a healthy relationship, is our partner wouldn't hold those things against us. They would support us and maybe encourage us to go and get therapy to help heal those wounds that we have, however they've been caused. But with a narcissist, what they do is they target those wounds and they manipulate those wounds, and they will poke at those wounds until those wounds that were scabbed over will be bleeding and pussy and sore, and it impacts you as a person. And when you combine that along with trauma bond, along with maybe the fact that you might have been financially abused and they've taken control of all your money, so financially you can't get out, or maybe you have children and we have the limiting belief that it's better for the children to be with two parents than it is for the children to be in a single parent family, even if one of those parents is abusive. Maybe that might be our reason for staying, because we feel it's better for the children.
I mean, I decided to stay for my children. I knew, I think I felt like, okay, maybe I would not be able to take care of my children if I were to leave just on my income alone. So that allowed me to stay. It allowed me to tolerate the emotional abuse.
My mum didn't think that she could cope financially and alone. And I know I was 17 when I left, but it was like I sort of set her up. I was like, okay, we give Dad the lounge and we give him the bed and we give him a dining table. And my mum was like, well, I've got no money. What will we sit on? And I said, it doesn't matter if we're sitting on milk crates. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't need that stuff. We just need you to be safe. And I think that the children part is, you know, I actually think that my dad used the children, us, as a reason to stay, and convinced her that he needed to be there for the children. So she was convinced that he needed to be there for the children, but it was the worst possible thing. It would have been so much better if they separated a lot younger, and, you know, he would probably have a better relationship with me.
And I've had people kind of say to me, oh, well, why did you stay? Did you enjoy the abuse? I was asked that recently, and I was like, please don't try to understand it unless you've been in the situation yourself. And every situation is going to be different. But until you've been through something as traumatic as being in an abusive relationship, it doesn't necessarily always have to be physical. Coercive control, it can destroy someone. But in my situation, I had all forms of abuse.
How can we help a friend that might be in this abusive type relationship? I would say first and foremost, be a listener for them. Let them know that you are there for them no matter what, that you can create a safe space for them if they need to. You may even help them create a safety plan of some sort if they're, trying to get out. But I would also say that you have to meet your friend where they are. And there's a good chance that they're not maybe ready to leave yet, even though harm is being inflicted. And we have to honor that. We have to honor where the people are. You know, I think it takes several times sometimes for people to leave abusive relationships. There's a lot of leaving and then going back, and we're just going to be that stable, steadfast person in their lives that is ready to listen whenever they need us.
And that when we are the friend of someone who's trying to leave an abusive relationship, the more I tell that person to leave, the more anxious that person's going to be. And now they're insecure even more. So what happens to them psychologically is they default to the person that they think makes them feel secure, which is a narcissist. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we educate ourselves and we know as much as we can about this person's fear of what's going to happen next. And let's face it, there are narcissists out there that are physically violent. Like our fear of being hurt is real. Our fear of a narcissist hurting our children is real. Our fear of a narcissist destroying our reputation, destroying our business, it's real. Our fear of being financially ruined, it's all real. So our fears are not invalid. In fact, they're valid, but we stay because we're trying to avoid that potential. And so if a friend comes along and says, oh, you're in a bad situation, you should leave him, I'm only going to freak out even more and secure myself with him even more, because that's what makes me feel safe. Because if you try to validate a narcissistic abuse survivor too quickly, they won't believe you, because the narcissist has conditioned them to believe that they're the narcissist. They're the problem. And so you have to be very gentle when dealing with a narcissistic abuse survivor so that they can start sharing things about their experience, in their time. And I think sometimes as friends of narcissistic abuse survivors, we just want to hoorah and pat them on the back. They're coming out of a fog. It doesn't feel natural to be suddenly be validated after so many decades and weeks and months of being invalidated.
What is your superpower?
My strength, and knowing that I can think it, believe it, and achieve it.
My ability to share my experiences.
Unconditional love.
Vulnerability, honesty, love.
I'm always willing to help people.
My heart.
I can love the people who have hurt me.
I can sense people.
Es resiliencia.
Being able to speak.
I'm a very, very fast learner.
The ability to relate to all different kinds of people.
I still always see the best part of every person.
Bringing people together.
I can find anything, anywhere.
I'm very supportive.
Just superwoman, honey.
Intuition.
Realizing my character.
To see the good in others.
Listening.
Courage.
My mother.
Mam dużo nadziei.
Authenticity.
To make friends.
Deep connection.
My ability to grow.
Helping others. Growing.
Listen to my heart.
It's creativity and innovation.
Is recombobulation. Is being me.
Seeing the world with wonderment.
Patient.
To understand at a very deep level. Love.
Bring out the deeper parts in people.
To think logically.
Self-healing.
Motivate people from the heart.
A wszystkie kobiety, które dzisiaj słyszeliście, są dowodem na to, że ta zmiana jest warta tego, żeby ją podjąć i warta jest tego, żeby o siebie zawalczyć.
This was an experience that actually helped us learn how to love ourselves better.
Everything isn't happening to you, everything's happening for you. We don't have to get trapped in the past story. Instead of believing that we're broken and wounded and nobody will ever love me, we need to shift that perspective and say, no, I'm a warrior. I survived the unthinkable. And now I am stronger and better. I have gone through it and I've come out even better than before.
Someone else out there is living our life. Someone else out there is living the life that all of these survivors and thrivers have escaped right here, right now. You can pick up any newspaper. You can go online to any news outlet and you'll hear about mostly women some men, but mostly women, who are killed by their boyfriends, who are killed by the children of their father. You hear it all the time. And so there's someone out there right now that is living your survivor story. And when you start speaking, you give that person hope. So suddenly, with the hope, they start to have this idea of choice. And that is really possible. That's where you can really help someone create great impact in that person's life, and if they stay on the path, they can then in turn create great impact in their life. They can end generations of trauma. They can end generations of codependency, generations of women and men picking the wrong partners and staying and not understanding what's going on. And I think that is so encouraging. And that's why you do what you do, because you want to encourage people to awaken and to take ownership over their life in a powerful way and to tell their story.
You just don't know what people have gone through in this life to live, to stay alive, to breathe, to not cry, to hide their laughter because someone else doesn't want them to laugh. Someone says, oh, well, blah, blah, blah has happened to me. Immediately take a breath and say, what if that were me? How could I handle that?
Your reality can change. Who you are can evolve. You need to focus on love to access the reality of who you are. You need to embrace love in your life.
But that's what we're missing in this universe. It's love. And that is the antidote to hate, crime, pain, depression, anxiety, and hurting each other.
Thank you so much for watching. I would love to invite you for the next episode, which is all about how our children see and feel the dynamic of abusive cycle. See you in the next episode. Bye. If this episode resonates with you, please go to exposenetwork.com. You will find the link below, and we would love to learn more about you and your story. Could you do me a favor and share this episode with at least 2 of your friends who might be going through some difficult, challenging relationships? Remember, together we can make a difference. Thank you. You can thrive and you can be happy after an abusive relationship. Do you have a story to share?
It's night in the city, and I'm on my way back home. Humming on my favorite ditty, swinging like Natalie Cole. But then out of the blue, who strolls down the boulevard but you? Your place is closer than mine. Why don't we go there and have some more wine? 'Cause life is for living. Let's see where the sun might lead. Let's see where the sun might lead. Waking up to a brand new day in between your sheets, breaking up in the best of ways, and I'm back again on the street.